talk. We're going to have Ryan speaking about SE, Security Enhanced Wi-Fi. There's no fancy logo. If any of you want to do a napkin drawing during the talk, bring them up afterwards. Take it away.
Cool. Thanks for coming. This is my first talk at ShmooCon, so so I'm going to start this talk by saying, some of my favorite talks that I ever see at conferences are the ones that motivate me to go out and build something better than what I saw on stage, or go out and solve a solution to a problem that they presented. And so hopefully today I can encourage some of you to go out and either contribute to the project or see what you can come up with yourself. And so I normally also don't do this, but today I'm going to reiterate the title of the talk because I want to emphasize one word, and it is building a security enhanced USB Wi-Fi dongle. So this is really a work in progress. I'm going to talk about revision 1 and revision 2 of the project as I go through these slides. Revision 1 is where it is in its stable state. A couple weeks ago I went through all my code and kind of ripped out everything that was in a horrible disarray. And so revision 1 is stable. It's what you can get on the GitHub repo right now, and revision 2 will be released in the following weeks and months. So let's get started. Kind of the de facto who am I slide. I'm a security researcher in Austin, Texas for a company called Zifton Technologies. I heard a woo. I do all of their crazy prototyping, so when we come up with a wacky idea and we decide whether or not we want to put it in the product, I come up with a prototype so we can test it before we put it in. I'm also responsible for all of our partnership integrations, so if you ever use our software with a third-party vendor software, I'm typically the man behind the mask who either implemented it all or architected it. I'm a frequent conference speaker, so a couple years ago I started speaking at conferences, and I found that I really enjoyed it, and it's really a great way to come out of your silo on projects that no one knows nothing about and share them with the community and get feedback and kind of motivate people. I'm a recent father of 2. It's a tough job, tougher than I thought it was, but I'm getting back to getting normal sleep, so I'm back on some night and weekend projects, this being one of them. Love to skateboard. I'm kind of an old man skater, so I like to stick in, cruise bowls and ride half pipes. And I don't get out as much as I used to, but I love it when I get a chance to. And I also love to hack on things, so whether it be hardware or software, front end or back end, I try and run a full gambit, and you'll see that throughout this slide, or throughout all these slides. So what is the problem? What was I trying to solve with this whole project? It would be a complete and utter lie if I told you that I did this project to help people and, and solve an issue. So let's skip all of the top bullet points here and go down to the last one. So I started this project for selfish reasons. I am in the security research community, so I find myself reimaging my computer multiple times per year, switching operating systems a lot, switching computers a lot. And every time I do this, I always start in the same place. I need to set up all my security stack, all my favorite tools, everything that protects me. And so what I wanted to do with this project was create a little device which would embed all of my favorite security tools that I typically set up. And this would be a modular device which I could then plug into my stock de facto computer, and I'd be up and good to go. So that's where this project really originated. And so after building revision 1 and using it for a few months and coming to realize that this was actually a viable solution, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be really awesome if I could make this project usable by mere mortals, right? So if I could allow my dad or my sister to use this device, I would then in turn enhance their network security on any time that they're connecting to interwebs. And I would also be able to allow them to use some of the tools that we've all become familiar with and we can use, but other people can't. So I wanted them to have the ability to use these without having to know how to install them, set them up, or configure them. And so those are really the problems that I'm trying to solve here. And so let's go on to the goals, right? And I kind of lead it into this. So the main goal of the project is to provide, basically encapsulate all of these tools into a device which is familiar to use by all users and make it seamless to use. And so I figured everyone in the world pretty much knew how to take a USB Wi-Fi dongle, plug it into the computer, and connect to a network with it. So this is the kind of architecture I was going for. Some other goals, it must be cross-platform. I don't know what type of operating system that this is going to be run on. And it must be small and affordable. Revision 1 of this fails at most everything. Revision 2 is working to fix a lot of these goals. Let's go on. So this is my horrible Photoshop representation of what I'm trying to do here if I've already lost you and I've failed as a speaker. But basically, we have a host computer, which can be running various different operating systems. We have a USB device, which we would then plug into this computer. And on that USB device, we are running an embedded Linux distribution with firewall tools for filtering our network traffic and tools for blocking and protecting the host computer behind it. And then our traffic is basically going to go from our computer out through this device, out to the Wi-Fi, and out to the ether of the internet. Super simplified, but just kind of there in case I lost anyone. I had some core requirements. So there's a lot of Linux embedded devices out there nowadays. So there was a lot of choices, and luckily I had some core requirements. It had to be a Wi-Fi enabled device, preferably onboard Wi-Fi. It had to have a CPU that was beefy enough to run a full-fledged IDS, right? I didn't want some stripped down IDS, which is basically going to be useless to us. I wanted to, run something more beefy. It needed to have a USB interface, preferably an A adapter on it, so we didn't have to have a cable in between the two devices, and it would be more dongle-like. And size was obviously another issue too, like another requirement that I had. I wanted this to be small and USB dongle-like. Unfortunately, some of the more popular embedded Linux devices did not meet my requirements. So BeagleBone Black and Raspberry Pi, awesome products, but they don't have onboard Wi-Fi, and they were bigger than a dongle, right? So the third device down here on this image is the Gumstix Overo, which is what I went with. It kind of gets a bad rap, and I'll go into it a little bit in the next slide in more detail. But that's what I used. And then you'll see at the very bottom of here, the fourth device down is the super top secret Vision 2 board. It's not really top secret. I'm going to tell you all about it. I just wanted to give you guys a teaser here. But it's really small, so it's cool. I've also tried some of this stuff on rooted phones and stuff like that, but the process for setting it up and using it was so convoluted that I figured a typical user would not be able to use it in the end. Another thing to mention too, there's some really cool security projects out there that people have done on low resource SOHO routers, the Portal project being one of them, which is super cool, but it concentrates on being anonymous, right? And so I wanted something that really concentrated on enhancing your security. So as I mentioned, I used the Gumstix Overo for the revision 1. I was using an IronStorm PCOM. If you're unfamiliar with Gumstix, basically they take this modular approach to embedded Linux where you have a main board and you have a daughter board. Your main board houses all your brains, basically your CPU and your onboard Wi-Fi and your SD card and your RAM. And then you would plug this into a daughter board which has the interfaces for your project. So if you have a project where you need 2 Ethernet jacks, you would buy the daughter board with 2 Ethernet jacks, plug this thing in, and you're good to go for your project. For my project, I needed a daughter board with a USB A adapter. So luckily they actually provide one, so I bought it. It's called the Thumbo USB daughter board, and when you put it together, it looks like this, and it's USB dongle-like. One of the pitfalls of the Gumstix project is the main boards are not fully open source. So it's kind of a bummer of this, and that's one of the reasons why they get a bad rap. One of the other reasons why I think Gumstix really gets a bad rap too is they don't really provide a lot of Linux distributions out of the gate, right? So they provide a Yocto build for their embedded Linux device. If you're unfamiliar with Yocto, it's kind of like the Gen 2 of embedded Linux. It's not easy to use by users, and there's a lot of, it's cool, but it's got to be for the right thing. They also support like some really old Ubuntu image, which is like 11.04, which really isn't going to be great for a security project. So one of the first hurdles I had with this project was going out and building a lot of different U-boot Linux images for the Gumstix Overo board. So I have links to it later in upcoming slides, but basically on my GitHub repo, you can go there and you'll have detailed documentation on building Linux distributions for the Gumstix Overo board for stock Debian Wheezy, Kali Linux, the SEWiFi project, and some custom Yocto builds that I have. But I have precompiled images there and full details on how to build all these yourself if you want. I also have automated build scripts so you can do nightly builds of this stuff. So that was kind of a plus of me kind of delving into this hardware. So one of the main questions too, once I had this up and running, was, can this little ARM device run a full-fledged IDS, right? And I'm a big Bro fan, so I wanted to know whether or not Bro could successfully run on this thing. Bro tends to be a little more CPU hungry than other IDSs, but for good reasons. And I probably wouldn't be here today if it didn't. So, so it runs just fine. You're really only taking traffic from one host through this device. So I sit on this particular device at about 35% CPU running Bro in Bro control mode. And that's with a stock configuration, so we're not stripping down the configuration or anything like that. For the revision 1, the firewall is pretty standard. It's nothing fancy. Revision 2's where all the changes in dynamic firewalls come in, but in revision 1, we're just doing some simple natting to get all the traffic from the USB interface out to the Wi-Fi interface, and some simple block all rules on the Wi-Fi interface to try to block all the ports that I probably left open in the configuration. Other things that are on the stock revision 1 board, or the stock revision 1 build, would be OpenVPN. So I typically run this setup with OpenVPN in the mix, because that would have been another network bottleneck or CPU bottleneck, and I wanted to make sure that it was fine. And it turns out it's just fine, so my traffic is typically going from USB to Bro to OpenVPN to IP tables and then out to the firewall. I have various other network tools and recon tools on the device for revision 1, and these are mostly just for me to play with so I can start work on revision 2. So if all this seems interesting, this is how you would go about building your own. I've mentioned Gumstix a lot. There's a lot of different series, but any of the P-Storm series would work. I've listed the 3 of them, the Iron, Fire, and Air ones here, kind of in descending order from most expensive to least expensive. You can go with the least expensive one and you'll be just fine. The Iron and Fire just have more graphic power computation stuff, and the Air is probably the cheapest route in order to get this going. Any of the USB daughter boards they supply should work. I'd recommend going with a Thumbo board, just because that's what I'm using and testing on. Documentation, as I mentioned, one of the byproducts of this whole project was all of the documentation I have for building these images, and you can get them on this link here for the Gumstix Avero images, along with the SEWiFi image that I provide. I provide manual steps for building it yourself. I also provide the precompiled image, and you can get up and running in about 5 minutes with this thing, if you go with the precompiled route. But if you don't trust me, build your own. If you're super rad and you can already get Debian Wheezy running on a board like this, the architecture I took for this project is basically just a big envelope deb package. So I have an apt repo that houses this deb package, and it's basically just a wrapper package which installs a bunch of dependencies, and after all those dependencies are installed, it does a full post-install configuration on your whole operating system, so everything's up and running and working. So the current state of revision 1, so where's it at? Is it usable? Could you go out and use this and find some value in it today? I would say yes. If you're a Linux savvy individual, which I would guess most of us are in this room, you could get up and going. So basically, you plug this thing in, it'll spin you up a DHCP address, you SSH in, set up your WPA.conf file, and you should be good to go. If you want to do some of the more advanced stuff, which really isn't too advanced, like having a persistent truncated VPN connection that doesn't let your traffic go out if you're not on VPN, it's a little more set up, but it's not too bad. Is revision 1 ready for everyday users? No, right? I wouldn't go build one of these things and give it to your mom or your dad yet. Revision 2, definitely. So that's the work in progress. The security stack that comes on the default revision 1, as I mentioned, Bro, IP tables, and then OpenVPN. The hardware, I mentioned it, and the affordability. Unfortunately, one of the other pitfalls of Gumstix is it's not very cheap. So you're looking at $150 to $200 to get this up and running. So that's a good segue to revision 2. So before I get into that, though, one of the main goals of revision 2 is to tackle this seamless use. And so I have a lot of crazy ideas to make it seamless, but one of the the more viable crazy ones is the first bullet here, which is to make this device masquerade as a like a commodity USB Wi-Fi dongle or driver, right? So make this thing masquerade as an Atheros chipset, right? And that's just doing some, gadget USB driver trickery. So I'm working on that. It's a red hot mess. That's why I stripped out of revision 1. The web configuration and active portal for this. So this will be in revision 2 no matter what. It's kind of like the easiest route to allow a typical user to set this thing up and set up the networks they would want to connect to. The hardware is the big change for revision 2. So revision 2 is all on a Intel Edison board. It's a newer board that came out this year, but it's much smaller, right? It's a little bit bigger than a quarter, and one of the unfortunate things about it is it is new, so there's no daughter boards for it that match my requirements with an A adapter, USB A adapter. So I'm in the work of building my own right now. Once I have it built, it'll be open specs, open hardware, and I'll try and get them out to people as easy as possible. I don't know, as nice as possible. But the cool thing about this, though, is the price point drops, right? The Intel Edison boards are also a lot cheaper, so this thing should be a DIY build for like $50 to $100, so it's not too bad. The security stack is also undergoing a lot of changes in revision 2. Just adding in a lot of the icing on the cake, right? So it'd be cool to see, like DNSSEC forced on this thing, or alternate IDSs in case you're not a bro fan. I would call you a broner. Tor if you're into the whole anonymous thing, and HTTPS proxies, and alternative VPNs if you're not an OpenVPN fan. And one of the cooler changes too is to make this device more proactive. So when you have IDS alerts, dynamically change the firewall at the time that it happens, or if you're really getting hosed, just cut off all your network traffic for a while. So it'd be a more dynamic firewall and a more save your butt kind of tool. Tidying up the base configuration just kind of happens over time with maturity of a project, and possible cross-hardware support. So the way that I architected this project to work, with it being one mega deb package, it's not too far-fetched for me to support other embedded Linux devices like a Raspberry Pi or a BeagleBone Black, right? I just need to recompile some of the core tools that are going into this as dependencies under ARMH, HF, FH, or instead of ARML, so it's not too bad. So, speaking of which, too, I forgot to mention it. Has anyone here ever used GitHub to host apt packages, like Debian packages? It's a really cool trick. Anyway, I'll do a blog post about it. It was kind of neat. So basically, you can just do a rep repo and sync it all up, and then just use the raw links in order to get to it, and apt-get install from GitHub. It's pretty neat. That's what I did with this project. I didn't want to buy EC2 space that I would forget about a year from now, and then I ended up spending like money I didn't want to. So if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, please let me know. That's kind of why I'm here today. I really want to get some feedback on what you would like to see in revision 2, any types of features. You can follow me on Twitter is probably the best way to figure out what I'm doing or anything that I'm working on or any updates on this project. If you want to do something more personal, there's my email address. The whole project is hosted at my GitHub repo, and along with the slides, I uploaded them last night, so they should all be there if you missed any of the links or anything in here that you want to take a look at. And then I'll have a blog post about this, and then, I don't know, probably the next following weeks. So I actually made a New Year's resolution to myself this year to make a blog post once a week for the rest of the year, and I've already failed horribly at it. So, but luckily I have a lot of backlogged stuff, from this project, so maybe I'll release 5 of them next week, and then I'll be good until like the first week of February. So, cool, that's it.